Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be showing you how to build this interactive point cloud texture in Touchdesigner with a pop network and through an app, a free app that allows us to send um, data from the phone to Touchdesigner. So we're going to be using this interactive data depending on where your finger is in your phone screen, and also the amount of surface your finger is touching of the screen. You're gonna be able to control how the um, how the shape grows and disappears. So we are gonna be using a free app called ZigSim that you can find in App Store and also in Android if you have Android. I'm using this from Apple Store. So the first thing you have to do is to download this app. There are two versions. This is the free one because we have enough data available to do this interactive project. But also if you want to check, there is a pro version that's only 4 or 5 euros, I think. And it has a lot of different parameters like facial recognition, depth map, infrared. It's pretty interesting if you want to experiment with interactivity. Okay, so we are gonna be building all this from scratch. So we have here our empty Touchdesigner network, and the first thing we have to do is to download the ZigSim app. The free version is more than enough because we have all the data we need to do this project. There is a lot of types of data we can use on this app. For now, we are just gonna be using 2D touch and touch radius. And we go to the setting page, and here we see all the data we have to match with our computer. So in our Touchdesigner network, we add here a OST int chop, and we're gonna see all these options that we have to match with our phone. By default, we see that we have ADP as a protocol, so we left this, and we have to, the only thing we have to change is the IP. We have to find the IP on our computer and write it on our phone, on the app. So we go to the network settings in our computer. Here, I'm sorry, it's in Spanish, but is the network settings, the Wi-Fi. You go to the Wi-Fi and the properties. And here, if you scroll down, you will see the IP direction. In my case, is this one. And I'm gonna write this on the app, on the IP address part. After this, you just have to be sure that you have the same number into your phone than in your Touchdesigner project. In my case, I was using 50,000, so I put 50,000, and if you press start, you will see automatically the data arriving to your Touchdesigner. You don't have to touch anything else. In any case, be sure that you have your project running, because a lot of times I had errors because I had this stopped. And if you have the project in pause, the data is not going to arrive, obviously. And in any case, sometimes the app obviously bugs because all these type of protocols, sometimes they don't work and we don't know why. So the only thing I can say is if it's not working as easy as this for you, start again, delete the node, put it again. Be sure that you only have one project open with this same network port. Otherwise, it's going to be sending different data. It's going to be a mess. So yes, be sure that you have only one project open with all this, and it should work. Okay, after this, we see here that we have, when we move the finger on our screen, we see we have touch 01, touch 02, and touch radius for the surface or the pressure we do with our finger on our screen. Also, you will see that this adds information if you touch with more than one finger, but we don't care. We can just reset channels because we are going to be working just with these three values. Okay, so let's map and stabilize a little bit the data before building the point cloud network. For this, we are gonna put one select here for the touch position and another select for the radius. After this, we select here, because I like to be a little bit organized, because after otherwise it's a mess. We are gonna rename the channels. Oops, this should be empty. Wait. Here we have to select these two. If you do this, you can see everything you have selected. So the first one is touch 1. We have to decide in what position we want to have our phone. In my case, I'm using it in horizontal. So when my finger is in the left, usually it's the lower part of the phone, but for me now, it's gonna be the left because I'm using it like a controller, okay? Here I have my finger on the left part, and here on the right part. So we see that touch 02 is my X axis. So we are gonna rename touch 1 is the first one we have here, so is TY, and the second one is gonna be TX. And now you can see here that when you move your finger in horizontal in your phone, you have TX, and in vertical, TY. And here we're gonna do the same, but for the radius, we are gonna rename it to rad. Okay, so we have our data, and we are gonna normalize it a little bit. I don't know if this is the proper, best way for doing it. It's just the way I do it. I'm not super into chops, honestly, but it's enough. In this first select, we are gonna select our TX, and in the second select, we select our TY. And here we are gonna add a math. This math is gonna rearrange the values, because now if we have in the left part maximum 0.9, and in the right part minus 0.9, and we want it to be from 0 to 1. So we go to range, and we say, where is 0. Let's say 0.8, because I want to let a little margin. Where it's 0.8, I want it to be 0. And when it's 0 minus 0. Let's say 82, so we left the borders of the font free, it's 1. And now we can see that our math is kind of normalized from 0 in the left to 1 on the right. And we are gonna do the same for the y-axis. And in this case, we see when we have the finger in the lower part is 0.9, and we want it to be 0. So where is 0.9? We want 0, and in the top one, where is 0 minus 0. Let's say 9, it's 1. And again, we have it kind of normalized. And yes, that's it. Sometimes I use, it's not completely necessary, but I like to use limit, even if after we filter it, so we will have again a lot of numbers. I like to first clamp it from 0 to 1, so we don't have any value outside this. And then in the quantized part, I like to round it. Quantize, round 0, 0, 1, and we have both of them 0 and 3 numbers. For me, it's easier to work with. And just for ending this, I like to put two nulls. I call them TX in this case and TY in this case, and I like to put them in red because they are gonna be the one that controls the network. Okay, we have the first part mapped, and then the touch radius is just, I like to put a filter here for the data to be more dynamic, maybe like this. And we will map it after when we are gonna use it, but we see that the When we touch slightly the screen, it's around 19. And when we touch it with more part of the finger, it can be up to 180. So we will map it after. Okay, so we have our first part of our data mapped, and we are gonna now build the point cloud, the texture we are gonna be managing. We start with a point generator here. It's gonna be a rectangle, size 2, and 2 in the x axis and 1 in the y axis. And I'm using around this amount of numbers, but if you see your computer is struggling during the process of doing the network, you can reduce this amount of points, maybe it's better. We don't need here the normal for now, so I'm gonna delete them. And we are gonna first build the, I like to see what I'm doing when I work, when I build networks, and for a tutorial it's even better because it's necessary you to follow the results. So I'm gonna build now the render system, and we can have it on the background. So we put render, transform, null. The transform, we activate the background here, and we visualize the null at the background. We need a light comp, as always. And instead of camera, I'm gonna use a camera viewport because I prefer to work with it. And you drag and drop it on the render, and this is our grid. Okay, you can work like this with the camera viewport, so that's why I prefer it. Okay, now for visualizing correctly everything, we are gonna here put a copy. You will see it's in the first input, but it has to be in the second one. And here we are gonna do a little box because this is gonna allow, the system is gonna convert every one of the points on in a little box like this. So here we are. Okay, we turn every viewer off for the computer not to suffer, and we can start building the texture. The first thing I want to build is the part when we can interact with our finger, so the control. So the first thing is we are gonna add a field, and I'm gonna show you how the field works in case you are not super familiar with it. If you activate the viewer and you put in the display attribute dots, you go to weight, you will see that you have a red part and a blue part. That means that we are putting like a mask in the geometry. The red part is gonna have value 1 and the blue is value 0. This is gonna be outputting a weight attribute that's gonna be these values that we are gonna use after for applying the movement just in the part we want to apply. So we are gonna use a box size 0.3 more or less. I rounded a little, but this is as you want. And I was using a little bit of transition here, a little bit. So we see that we have a lot of points with value 0 and points with value 1. How are we working with this? Because now, if we add a noise here, we see that the noise is applied on the position of all the grid. We are gonna just copy the values I had for my noise before because I'm not gonna be doing this from scratch. Just as orientation values, you can change as you like and as you want. 25 here, and we see that the noise is being applied everywhere. If we come here to output, in this case we're gonna say that we want an attribute called noise, but we don't want to apply this noise for now, so we don't combine. So now if you see, you have here a noise attribute with the position of the particles with this noise, but we are not applying it on the position for now. What we do is we are first, I like to animate this noise let's animate the noise with this as a speed around this value. In the transform page, we can reference it here. We are not going to see it for now, but I like to have it done. And here we're going to add a math combine. Why? Because in this math combine, we're going to be telling the system that we want to apply this noise only in our field. So the first thing we have to do is to multiply the noise and the weight, and we're going to have the noise only applied in the field here. And after this, we are going to say to the system, okay, now apply please on the position the noise. And we can see here how we are applying the noise only in the position. This is cool, but we have now to map the data from the phone on this field so we can see how it moves. Let me change a little bit. Where is the light? Because I don't like when it's super bright. Yes, kind of like this. We will manage the light after. Okay, what we are going to do then is to map how we are gonna move the data on the grid. So we are gonna use 3 select. The first one for tx, the second one for ty, and the third one for the radius. The select for the tx is gonna be the first we're gonna do. I want to filter it a little. It's not completely necessary, but just in case sometimes the data is not completely stable, with a little bit of filter, it can be a little bit smoother. You can see that now we have more values than before, like more numbers, but at the end we don't care. And we are gonna put a math because we have to map where from where to where we are gonna move the field. So in this case, tx is the horizontal one. So if we see the point generator, we have the grid from -1 on the x-axis to 1 in the x-axis, and in the y from -0.5 to 0.5. So these are the values we are going to map. And we are going to say to the system, okay, I have values from 1 to 0, but I want them to go from -1 to 1. And maybe you're thinking, yes, but this is what we had from the app with the raw data. And yes, absolutely, it was kind of normalized between these values. But in general, imagine you don't have this geometry for working and you have another kind of geometry. It's better to be able to, with this math, to map already having something between 0 and 1. So even if it's redundant here, I prefer to do it like this, just in case I change the geometry after or whatever. So after this, we can see that this is moving from -1 to 1. We add a null here for ending this network, and I'm gonna call it tx. It's gonna be tx1 because we already have one tx, but we don't care. And we reference this into the field, into the transform page, because we are gonna be moving this in the x-axis. And now you can see that if you move your finger into the phone, you see the field moving. So super good. We do this, and we're gonna copy exactly the same for our y-axis. Oh, okay. We connect this to this filter, and we are gonna okay. We have to apply the range from -0.5 because it's the y-axis to 0.5. And now the same with this. This is ty, and this is gonna be referenced to the transform y-axis. And now we have completely mapped our grid with our phone. This is the more complicated part of the tutorial to achieve, to have the data inside Touchdesigner and to connect it with our system. After this is more a personalization part, and you can do whatever you want with this grid. I'm gonna show you how I did the organic texture, but you can do whatever. And in the same line with the surface, what I like to do with this is to change this parameter of the field, the transition range. So because if you see, this changes the amount of zone we are working with. So if we do this a little bit bigger, maybe 35, yeah, we can map the pressure of the finger from minus 0.2 to, I don't know, 0.2 maybe. So we add here a math, a math, and we say, okay, when I touch the screen slightly, we have 19. So range 19 here. In the second, when I put all my finger in the screen is 180. Wait, I missed, little mistake. Okay, so, and we want it to be, we said, from minus 0.2 to 0.2. So now we have our radius mapped, and we link this to the parameter of transition alignment. And now, depending on how much you touch the screen, you will see it grows or not. If you want it to be even more evident, you can, in the math, maybe less. Yeah, now it's maybe more evident. You see, if you touch a lot, it's big. If you touch soft, it's little. So perfect, we have our data mapped, and everything is working good. Remember, save the project. We don't want this to crash and to lose everything we did for now. And then we are gonna finish our network aesthetic. So we put this far away, and we are gonna work first in the main aesthetic, in the main movements of the grid. So we add here a noise. I'm gonna directly copy the parameters I was using. Here we change the seed, period 0.03, harmonics 5 to 0.7, no, less. Amplitude 0.48, exponent 4, kind of this. And we have this first aesthetic. Okay, after this noise, we are gonna work with the rotation of the little boxes with a random, and we are gonna change the combine operation for setting, and we are gonna declare a new attribute that's rotation and 360. And here in the copy, remember to, in template, activate the rotation. And now the little boxes are rotating with a random value. And now I'm gonna add here another noise for more, like a little bit of bigger curves here. Again, I'm gonna copy the parameters I already had in my original file, so you can also copy them. 0.95, the amplitude is gonna be super small, and you can play with this. Also, you can, if you want, animate this for having like organic movements. Let's do it. Let's put another speed, super slow one. Let's do 0.03, and we connect this to the translator. So yeah, we have now the base of the texture we want. Let's add now the material, because we are seeing everything super flat. I'm using a phone as usual with drag and drop, and we have this a little bit better, and we see the shadows a little bit crazy, so we are gonna put the light. I mean, this is as you like. I'm not super good putting lights. I struggle with this a lot. And let's change a little bit from where we see the network. Okay, perfect. Okay, now I see this in super bad resolution because I am working in super little. Let's put it, okay, this for the computer not to crash. Now we see it better. but still the texture is a little bit flat. So in the light we add the soft shadows, and now it makes a little bit more of sense, the texture. And we can see how we move the finger and it moves. So yeah, the result is in the way, super good. And now what I want to do is to apply the color in the area where my finger is modifying the geometry. Okay, so the way I do this, there is a lot of ways you can work directly applying the lookup texture on the field, on the weight. So what I like to do is I'm gonna add here at the beginning of the network an attribute pop where we are gonna duplicate the position attribute and we are gonna call it initial P. Why? Because we have the initial position of the grid of that's our rectangle, and then we are applying a lot of noises and movements into the position. But I want to calculate the difference between the flat geometry and the movements. So every variation we have of the noises and mostly the area we are moving, we will apply the color in the area where the points are moving more than the rest, okay? So in the math combine here, we are gonna add two blocks. The first block is gonna be just for calculating the difference between the initial position and the position with the movements. So we put P minus initial P is P, but we are not gonna call P, we are gonna call this difference, okay? And with this difference, we are gonna find the absolute value with the length. So the absolute value of diff, we are gonna call it, I don't know, move. So we have now an attribute called move that is indicating us the amount of difference between the initial position and the actual position of the points. So now that we have this attribute, we can apply the color on only the points that are being that are moving more, let's say, the one that has more difference between the initial position and the final position. So what we are going to do is to create another network from our initial network with this delete, and in the attribute window we are going to select move and put something like this, and you see here that if you press invert you will see that we are deleting points that are only the points which this attribute is smaller than this value. But what we want to do here is completely the opposite. What we want is only to maintain the ones on the part that we are moving with our finger, okay? So we select something like this and we put a lookup texture for applying the color as usual with the ramp, top ramp. We drag and drop this and we select color RGB. We remove the alpha, otherwise you will have an error. And for finishing this network, I usually copy this for gaining time, because it's the same render material and the same render shapes. So we put this here. And we see we don't, well, no, for now we don't have color applied, but even if we apply the color, we are not gonna see any changes. Because we have these points are also here, so we are seeing the gray ones and the colored ones one over the other. So here we are gonna do the same operation, but in an inverse way. We are gonna just delete the points we want to apply color here. So we do the same with the move attribute. We put similar values, but we invert it. So if you see here, we are inverting the ones that are moving more. For it to be more obvious, you can come to this noise and we can put bigger amplitude so they move even more. And we see the whole of the points we are deleting. So after this, we can apply the colors. Also, for applying the colors, you see we can see here the colors, but we don't see them in the geometry because in our copy we have to come to template attributes and declare we are using color. And now we see the colors here. It's a little bit extreme, the cut between colors and not, so that's why sometimes I like to, in this delete, the values to be kind of more diffused, and here the same. I want them to be like, I want to delete more parts of the network, so we have also this kind of broken holes aesthetic. We can play with this value. You can choose the aesthetic you want. I'm gonna let it like this. And also, before this lookup texture, in my original project, I put here a noise that allows us to move this part in different ways we want. But this is completely optional. It's only if you want to change the noise look of this part. And we see now that if we move around the texture, is changing, the colors are changing, etc. I'm gonna remove this black part. I'm gonna put maybe subtle blue, an intense red, dark. I don't know, this is just an example. You can play with the values as much as you want. And let's see with the camera viewport how we are doing this. Another trick, now that you have more details, you can here in the camera, in the render top, we drag and drop the null instead of the render. So when we do this, we can see the final result here instead of just the raw render. So let's change also a little bit the light, because the light changes a lot the aesthetic of the project. Okay. And we see also that this material is super dark, so in the phone I usually put the constant a little bit super subtle. Something is missing, maybe in these noises. Well, you can change also here the texture with the noises. Maybe this, okay, this is better. This period has here is way more organic, and we see that maybe this amplitude is too much, but again, this is up to you. And in my original project, I also had one more detail. That's another network. I was using another delete, but I was just deleting random points in the network, not according to the movement. So we use the theme, and we see that we have less points here. Even more, I want just a little quantity. I'm gonna do exactly the same because I want this same part of the network in the third line of the network. And we are gonna do one thing. Now I want another type of geometries, maybe a little bit bigger, but without almost depth in the depth or high in the Y value. You will see now. If we add a noise, you will see that we have extra particles around that we can also play with the period and how we want them to behave. They are also gonna be affected by our movement, so we can play with that also. And we can play also with the scale if we want, with these little boxes, with other random, etc. What we want to do before ending this is to work a little bit more maybe with the lights and in the render process. So I'm gonna do one thing I usually do is a composite in the render. We say maybe add, and here we select a bloom, but we only want this. So now we can work, add a little bit of bloom to this. This is up to you also, aesthetically what you want. Anyway, a little bit of bloom. You see here the result of the bloom, maybe super subtle, it depends on what you want to achieve. Maybe more noises like this. You can apply this, super organic. Yeah, and also one of the last details in the ramp here, I usually use circular and I change the period for selecting what part of the colors I want. I play with this noise for seeing how I want to behave, to the movement to behave. Also, after applying the bloom, checking how it looks like. Maybe I want more color around. Also playing with the lights. Yeah, the shadows are interesting like this. Maybe it's a little bit dark, everything. Maybe we can even delete a little bit more points. So yeah, if we put this value even smaller, we have colors everywhere because we are not deleting that many points. And I think the result can be even more interesting. But it's mostly this, playing with the colors and how it moves at the end. You can animate the noises. This one, maybe animating this noise is interesting also. I'm gonna use this same speed. And this would be the final result of this tutorial, this first tutorial working with processing data, external data into Touchdesigner and with interactivity. I hope you had fun, you learned something, and this can give you a lot of ideas about how to work with interactivity. Please, if you use any of these, tag me, reach me out. I want to see what you create with this. And thanks again for supporting me, following my tutorials. And also I remind you that I will be posting this file on my Patreon soon. So I encourage you also to go there and have a look about all the files I have there. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.